crazy.
Yeah, I feel like it's good to have them first.
Yeah.
Because then when the girl shows up, you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. No, but my little boy's so romantic. When I walk in, he goes, Mama, my love. Oh, he's just like, oh, he's just a dream.
I mean, like, they're Hollywood
chaos.
to its core. Blake Lively's once pristine image is now tangled in the kind of legal chaos and celebrity intrigue that tabloids dream of, and reputations rarely survive. What began as a seemingly civil lawsuit between Lively and her former co-star Justin Baldoni has escalated into a courtroom war zone, pulling in a list names media conglomerates. And now, as of the most explosive development yet, pop royalty herself, Taylor Swift. The court's recent ruling to deny Blake Lively's emergency motion to suppress a trove of private text messages between her and Swift has completely upended the trajectory of the case. It's not just a legal blow, it's a narrative detonation. Overnight, the story has shifted from a dry civil matter to an emotional and reputational earthquake. And Blake is standing dead center in the blast radius. For weeks, her attorneys fought tooth and nail to keep the text sealed, citing privacy irrelevance and the overwhelming risk of public misinterpretation. But the judge wasn't swayed. In a move that has sent shockwaves across the entertainment world, the court ruled that the messages are not only admissible, they're pivotal to understanding the full extent of Blake's alleged involvement in the defamation and reputational damage Baldoni claims nearly ruined his career. And now the very texts Lively sought to keep buried may soon be public record. This isn't just an ordinary celebrity scandal. It's a PR nightmare playing out in slow motion, with court transcripts and legal memos replacing the usual glossy magazine spreads. While the exact contents of the messages remain under wraps for the moment, leaks and whispers within the legal community paint a damning picture. Insiders hint at conversations that allegedly show coordination, possible narrative manipulation, and even a level of strategizing that, if confirmed, could lend substantial weight to Baldoni's claims of malicious intent. But it's the presence of Taylor Swift in these communications that takes the story to a completely different dimension. For years, Swift and Lively have presented themselves to the public as close friends, a sisterhood rooted in glamour and loyalty, and yet now those very ties could become a focal point of courtroom scrutiny. What did Taylor know, and when was she simply a sounding board for Lively's frustrations? Or did the messages suggest complicity, or worse, strategic involvement? Already the media is abuzz with speculation. Late-night hosts are joking about a Swiftied courtroom, and social media has exploded with conspiracy threads attempting to dissect and predict the fallout. Some Swifties are standing by their idol, convinced she's merely collateral damage in someone else's war. Others are demanding answers, feeling betrayed by the idea that their beloved star could be involved in any smear campaign, especially against another artist. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's public appearances have taken on a different tone. Once the golden girl of the red carpet, she now arrives at events under a different kind of spotlight. The unforgiving glare of scrutiny. Gone are the days of breezy banter and effortless smiles. Instead, Lively now fields questions with tight-lipped resolve, flanked by attorneys and flustered PR reps. The Tribeca Festival appearance, which was supposed to be a triumphant celebration of her latest directorial endeavor, turned into a minefield of speculation. Paparazzi cameras didn't just zoom in on her outfit, they captured every flicker of tension, every subtle body language cue, and fans noticed. But this story isn't just about celebrity drama. At its core, this legal battle has exposed the fragile machinery of Hollywood's image-making complex. Reputation in Tinseltown is currency, and what this trial is pulling back the curtain on is just how coordinated and high-stakes the PR chess game can be behind the scenes. When Baldoni filed his $400 million lawsuit, most pundits dismissed it as yet another vanity-driven spat between entertainers. But the lawsuit alleged something far more sinister: that Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds used their influence, industry contacts, and even media relationships to intentionally distort the narrative surrounding a now abandoned project that Baldoni had once helmed. The project in question, a female-led drama that was meant to challenge Hollywood norms, reportedly collapsed under mysterious circumstances. Baldoni alleged sabotage, whisper campaigns, and a string of anonymous tips to trade publications that cast him in a controlling, borderline abusive light. At first, no one believed it. But then came the subpoena requests, the witness depositions, and finally the discovery of the texts. For months, Lively's legal team fought to limit discovery scope, arguing that communications with friends, even famous ones, had no bearing on the case. But Baldoni's team countered that those texts were more than idle chatter. They were in some instances contemporaneous records of what Lively was thinking and doing during the very moments the alleged defamation campaign took place. And now, Thanks to the judge's ruling, the court agrees. What's emerging isn't just a legal case. It's a case study in how Hollywood handles scandal, control, and damage. For fans who've only ever seen the polished, controlled versions of their favorite stars, the courtroom is becoming a theater of truth, stripping away carefully curated filters and revealing the personal, sometimes uncomfortable reality of what goes on when reputations are on the line. Already, reporters are preparing for the public release of the text logs. Media outlets are drafting emergency op-eds. Crisis PR teams across Los Angeles are bracing for aftershocks. And through it all, the question looms: what role did Taylor Swift really play? If her involvement was minimal, she may emerge unscathed, possibly even sympathetic. But if the texts reveal deeper conversations, advice given, rumors traded, or worse, then even the world's biggest pop star may not be immune from the fallout. For Lively, the damage is already mounting. Brand deals are being quietly reevaluated. Streaming platforms are said to be nervous. Behind-the-scenes industry whispers suggest that some studios are reassessing their upcoming projects, with the actors wary of being swept into a PR storm that could still get worse. Meanwhile, Baldoni, once painted as the underdog, is suddenly finding his public image shifting. He's gone from being seen as a jilted creative to a principled whistleblower, someone who refused to be quietly buried by Hollywood power dynamics. And that narrative shift is one Lively's camp did not anticipate. What makes this even more damning for Blake is that she didn't just try to suppress the texts. She sought an emergency motion, a legal maneuver that communicates urgency, threat, and high stakes. It tells the court that the contents of these messages were seen by her team as so damaging that they warranted skipping over standard across media outlets, questioning what exactly Lively is so desperate to keep private. And that's the core of the PR crisis now engulfing her. The optics aren't just about the content, but the cover-up. Public trust can often survive scandal, but it rarely survives the perception of secrecy as the first wave of fallout hits. Even those closest to Lively are reportedly expressing concern. Sources say that Ryan Reynolds has taken a more hands-on role behind the scenes, consulting with legal teams and quietly speaking with executives at major studios and streamers to gauge damage control options. His own reputation, long considered bulletproof, may now be at risk by association. Their inner circle, once a who's who of Hollywood elite, is reportedly fracturing. Some friends are stepping back, others are lawyering up, and still others are leaking, anxious to protect their own names from a controversy that now seems to have no ceiling. This is only the beginning. The ruling to release the messages has opened the floodgates. Courtroom dates are being set. Journalists are circling. The entertainment world is holding its breath. And the two women at the center of it all, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift, may soon have to answer not just to a judge but to the public. Because in today's Hollywood, the court of public opinion moves just as fast as the legal system, and sometimes hits even harder. As the dust continues to swirl from the courtroom bombshell that shook the entertainment world, one thing has become painfully clear: Blake Lively is no longer in control of her narrative. For over a decade, she meticulously crafted a reputation as Hollywood's golden girl, a poised, elegant, seemingly untouchable fixture of film, fashion, and feminism. But in the span of a few weeks, the foundation of that image has begun to erode, not just from court documents and allegations, but from the deeper, more insidious consequences of public perception. Turning in a landscape where brand identity is synonymous with personal identity, Lively's crisis is not merely legal, it's existential. This isn't just a battle over defamation. It's a reckoning over truth, trust, and transparency in an industry that thrives on illusion. The buzz surrounding the leaked text has already created fault lines across the entertainment industry. PR firms are whispering to each other at Soho House meetings, calling it a nuclear-level mistake that those messages weren't settled privately before discovery even began. The fact that Swift's name is involved makes it exponentially worse. If it were just Blake versus Justin, the media might have treated it as a high-stakes but ultimately forgettable feud. But Taylor Swift, arguably the most influential woman in entertainment, being pulled into this as a character witness, however, indirectly raises the temperature of the case to boiling. Suddenly, gossip sites aren't just reporting, they're investigating. It doesn't help that the media cycle is working overtime. Anonymous sources have become gold, and those in proximity to the Lively Reynolds circle are either clamming up or feeding the fire in hushed tones. A former assistant reportedly told a prominent entertainment outlet that the texts, while not overtly criminal or violent, are embarrassing, arrogant, and reveal a side of Blake the public isn't used to seeing. That same source suggested there were moments where Lively appeared to boast about managing the narrative, surrounding Baldoni's creative direction and fallout from the project. According to the whispers, some texts allegedly included Taylor Swift commiserating with Blake. Nothing unusual between friends, but in context possibly indicative of deeper alignment with the anti-Baldoni campaign. If that proves true, it wouldn't necessarily make Swift liable, but it would complicate her image. A woman whose career has been built on surviving smear campaigns, now perhaps unwittingly participating in one. Blake's team, for their part, is trying to control the narrative. They've begun issuing firm but vague statements emphasizing Blake's commitment to the truth, her ongoing collaboration with the court, and her desire to maintain privacy in a deeply personal matter. But these statements have backfired. The court of public opinion is far less patient than a legal one. Every generic statement is seen not as measured but evasive. Fans and detractors alike are demanding clarity. What exactly are these messages? What did she say? Did Taylor Swift know her texts might become part of an evidentiary record? And most critically, why did Blake go to such lengths to suppress them if she had nothing to hide? Legal analysts are picking apart the court's ruling with zeal. Several believe the judge's decision was based on more than just the content of the messages. It was about context. That the communications between Lively and Swift painted a broader picture of intent, possibly showing a pattern of behavior or strategic thinking that went beyond casual venting. In this light, the texts become not just correspondence but documentation of mindset, of motive. And if that proves true, it bolsters Baldoni's claim that he was the target of a sustained, coordinated defamation effort driven not by truth but by industry politics and ego. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni has emerged as an unexpectedly formidable opponent. Once viewed as a charming but non-threatening presence in the industry, he has transformed into a man on a mission. At first, critics rolled their eyes when he attached a $400 million figure to his lawsuit, chalking it up to legal posturing. But now, with the court allowing such sensitive evidence into discovery, his claims no longer seem bloated. They seem validated. Baldoni has made limited public statements, but when he has spoken, he's been measured, principled, and almost hauntingly calm. He refers to the lawsuit not as revenge, but as a necessary act to defend integrity in an industry that doesn't value it enough. That framing is resonating, especially in the post-Meta post-strike climate where power, silence, and manipulation are no longer just Hollywood tropes, they're battlegrounds. There's also growing concern about the ripple effect. If the texts between Lively and Swift become public, it opens a dangerous precedent for other private celebrity communications to be pulled into the spotlight in unrelated lawsuits. Already there are murmurs that journalists are filing FOIA-style court record requests. Some legal blogs are even speculating that Lively's texts could include references to other industry players, directors, producers, agents, who had no idea their names would ever be caught in the legal dragnet. If so, the fallout won't just touch Blake and Taylor. It could ignite secondary scandals, shift alliances, and unravel years of carefully maintained PR campaigns across multiple Hollywood empires. For Swift, the situation is delicate. Her team has remained characteristically silent, and sources close to her say she's shocked and blindsided by the court ruling. It's unclear whether she will voluntarily testify or if she will be subpoenaed. If she does take the stand, or if any of her messages are read aloud in court, it will be one of the most dramatic moments in recent pop culture history. Swift has weathered media storms before, but none quite like this. This time, she isn't the wounded party crafting a revenge song. She could be a pivotal piece of evidence in a federal courtroom. And with her Eras Tour film still drawing millions, and her recently announced political initiatives gaining steam, the timing couldn't be worse. Industry insiders say Swift's camp is scrambling behind the scenes, possibly negotiating with both legal teams for damage mitigation. One theory suggests that Swift may issue a preemptive public statement, distancing herself from the legal matter, asserting that her conversations with Lively were personal and in no way intended for public or strategic use, but others warn that doing so might give the impression of guilt or deflection. It's a lose-lose scenario, and every move she makes from here will be scrutinized by both fans and legal experts alike. And then there's the human element. People forget that behind every salacious headline there are actual relationships crumbling, friends falling out, marriages under stress, careers on the line. This trial is no longer just a case filed audits, an autopsy of Hollywood's inner circle. Blake Lively is fighting for more than just her public image, she's fighting for her legacy. And the more she struggles to contain the narrative, the more it spirals out of her grasp. Rumors have started swirling that certain celebrities once close to Blake and Ryan have quietly begun to unfollow, to unfavorite, to stop returning calls. In Hollywood, that's the equivalent of open abandonment. Even brands she's previously collaborated with are reconsidering upcoming launches or softening campaigns to avoid backlash. This isn't just a mess, it's a spectacle, and the next chapters. Cross-examinations, testimonies, deposition leaks. Promise to be even more incendiary. But no matter what comes next, the message is clear. In today's digital hyper-connected world, nothing stays buried forever, not even private texts between best friends. As the legal gears grind forward, the private lives of those involved are being dissected in the most public ways imaginable. The strategy from Blake Lively's legal team is now clearly shifting from containment to survival. Multiple legal sources have confirmed that Blake's attorneys are preparing for the worst-case scenario. Total release of all text communications, including unredacted exchanges with not just Taylor Swift, but a short list of other unnamed celebrities. Some of these individuals, insiders claim, are now receiving notices warning them they may be referenced in court filings or potentially called as witnesses. The emotional toll is mounting. Blake's inner circle, once a fortress of Hollywood loyalty, is showing signs of strain. Several friends have been quietly distancing themselves, choosing silence over solidarity, and in Hollywood, silence is loud. Blake, for her part, is said to be emotionally exhausted and deeply frustrated, according to a longtime associate who spoke on condition of anonymity. Behind the glam, the Instagram posts, and the controlled press appearances, the reality is a woman unraveling under the crushing weight of a machine she once effortlessly maneuvered. She used to control the message, the associate noted. Now the message is controlling her. And in a town where perception is everything, that loss of control is not just personally devastating. It's professionally perilous. With each new leak, each court development, Blake's once bulletproof persona of relatable glamour becomes harder to sustain. Meanwhile, the public's reaction continues to evolve. What began as shock has now morphed into a kind of morbid fascination. The narrative no longer belongs to publicists, it belongs to the internet. And that's where things get even more complicated. In this new media ecosystem where content creators wield enormous influence and algorithms amplify controversy at light speed, the legal ramifications could expand beyond the celebrity class. A recent motion filed by Baldoni's legal team requests preservation of content and communications from a small group of high-profile online creators who commented extensively on the case early on, especially those who may have received insider tips or whose coverage may have shaped early public opinion. Though not named in the suit, some of these content creators could find themselves on deposition lists if the court deems their platforms influential enough to have impacted the reputational damage at the heart of Baldoni's claim. If this tactic succeeds, it could set a legal precedent with chilling implications. YouTubers, TikTokers, and online commentators may no longer be seen as bystanders to celebrity drama, but as participants. This looming threat has sparked intense debates within the influencer world. On one hand, many argue that public commentary is protected speech, especially when based on publicly available information. On the other, if content creators are shown to have knowingly spread false narratives or coordinated with insiders, they may be vulnerable to claims of defamation or civil liability. The gray area between journalism and entertainment has never felt more precarious. The idea that a court case involving two celebrities could ensnare YouTubers or podcasters is no longer hypothetical, it's on the docket. As for Justin Baldoni, his team continues to play the long game. His public silence is strategic, a stark contrast to the steady drumbeat of headlines surrounding Blake, and it's working. With every court victory, however procedural, Baldoni appears more legitimate in the eyes of the press. He's not just the man who filed a $400 million lawsuit. He's the man who stood up to the system, who dared to challenge the myth of Hollywood fairness. And as the case grows messier, the more he benefits from Blake's perceived instability. It's the oldest rule in showbiz: scandal. The calmer party usually wins in the court of public opinion. And now, with the judge allowing the texts into evidence, the next question looms: when will the public get to see them? Legal experts predict it could happen within weeks. Once the documents are formally submitted into the court record as part of trial evidence, any media outlet can request access, and you can be sure they will. Some of the world's largest entertainment outlets already have staff lawyers monitoring the filings daily. They're just waiting for the gate to open, and once it does, the deluge will be immediate. Entire news cycles will be devoted to dissecting every word. Was Taylor sympathetic? Was she strategic? Did Blake manipulate her, or were they co-conspirators? These aren't just fan questions. They're now central to the public understanding of a legal narrative with hundreds of millions at stake. The slow drip of anticipation is perhaps the cruelest part. Blake knows the dam will break. Her team knows it, her allies know it. And the longer they wait, the more time the public has to imagine. What might be in those texts? That imagination, fueled by social media and celebrity culture, is often far worse than reality. But in a case built on perception, even the illusion of impropriety can be ruinous. The damage has already started to bleed into her professional commitments. A major luxury brand that was reportedly set to announce Lively as the face of a new global campaign has now quietly postponed the launch indefinitely. Executives are watching the situation closely, according to a fashion insider familiar with the campaign. Meanwhile, a streaming deal she had been negotiating, rumored to be a prestige drama series where she'd also serve as an executive producer, is now paused for review. That term paused is the corporate equivalent of a death sentence unless a major narrative shift occurs in Blake's favor. Behind closed doors, crisis managers are working overtime. At least 3 firms have reportedly been in talks with Lively's team to provide reputational rehab services, but even they admit the challenge ahead is steep. One PR executive who declined to be named said bluntly, "This isn't just a scandal, it's a full-scale brand implosion." They added that the only viable path forward may involve a combination of legal resolution, televised mea culpas, and a long, voluntary break from public life. You can't spin this, you can only survive it. And yet in some corners of the industry there is a strange kind of respect building for the sheer audacity of it all, that Blake Lively, one of the most image-conscious women in entertainment, was allegedly involved in such a volatile digital paper trail. It's equal parts shocking and oddly humanizing. She's not just a polished icon anymore, she's a cautionary tale. A reminder that no matter how powerful you are, no matter how beloved the truth, or even the perception of it, can find you, and when it does, it doesn't knock. As the final hearings approach and the countdown to public disclosure ticks forward, the stakes have never been higher. For Blake, for Taylor, for Justin, and for an entire industry now reckoning with what happens when the curtain falls on its most curated stars. The Hollywood machine runs on stories, on carefully constructed, tightly managed narratives that sell stars as brands, friendships as fairy tales, and conflicts as misunderstandings. But when those stories implode, the raw reality that spills out is rarely pretty and almost never recoverable. For Blake Lively, that implosion is now well underway, with the court's refusal to seal her private messages, and the clock ticking toward their inevitable release. The image she worked years to cultivate is collapsing under the weight of her own words. The sense of betrayal among fans and insiders alike has reached a fever pitch. What was once speculation is now a full-blown public unraveling. The media has shifted from asking what happened to how bad will it get. The answer: worse than anyone expected. In the weeks since the judge's ruling, Hollywood has entered a kind of anticipatory paralysis. Studios are holding their breath, brands are pausing their partnerships. Publicists across Los Angeles are quietly comparing notes, terrified that one of their own clients might be mentioned in the forthcoming text logs. Rumors have emerged that the text messages between Lively and Swift include the names of high-level executives, directors, and even award show organizers. Some referenced casually, others critically. The implications are enormous. If the messages confirm any sort of coordinated media manipulation or derogatory backchanneling, it could send shockwaves through multiple have seen last-minute cancellations. Public appearances by both actresses have become infrequent and hyper-managed. Taylor Swift has not commented publicly since the ruling, but has noticeably gone silent on social media. While some fans chalk it up to timing, perhaps she's focused on her music or simply avoiding the drama. Those in the know understand the reality. She's laying low, letting legal teams prepare and strategize, and most critically ensuring that nothing else she says can be twisted or submitted into court as further evidence of involvement. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's side is methodically building its case. Depositions are quietly underway, a list of witnesses is being prepared, and according to someone familiar with the legal filings, Baldoni's team has identified over a dozen messages they believe demonstrate intentional, targeted efforts to harm reputation and professional standing. If those texts do indeed show that Lively and Swift, knowingly or not, contributed to the downward spiral of Baldoni's public image, it could redefine the scope of the lawsuit entirely. What was once a case about alleged defamation could become a case about collusion, reputational sabotage, and the weaponization of fame. Baldoni's attorneys have already floated language in pretrial motions about conspiratorial frameworks of influence, a phrase that, if used at trial, will almost certainly be dissected on every cable news panel and Hollywood gossip podcast within minutes. What makes all of this more volatile is the cultural moment in which it's happening. We're in an era of radical transparency where privacy is both more important and less protected than ever. Text, emails, DMS. All of them are seen not as private correspondence but as receipts. The public has become obsessed with accountability, especially.
Oh my gosh, I always appreciate when people correct me. It wasn't, someone said something about the spacing. I still really don't know how social media works, so if someone tells me how to fix spacing on something. Hyperlinks? Who knows how to work a hyperlink?
I don't know.
I use an iPhone, it does everything for me.
Yeah.
So can we talk about the alcohol now?
Grows. Some of Swift's fans have turned on Blake, outright insisting that Lively dragged Taylor into this, using their private conversations as emotional leverage during a time when Swift was likely unaware of the legal landmines ahead. Others, however, are beginning to question Swift's role more critically. She's too smart not to have known. One viral post reads, garnering hundreds of thousands of likes. Another fan wrote, if Taylor was even slightly involved, it's time to hold her accountable too. You don't get to play the victim and the villain. The tone has shifted. No longer is the public just watching a lawsuit unfold, they're watching the disintegration of an entire celebrity friendship in real time under the scrutiny of millions. And yet, as the scandal metastasizes, Lively's team remains largely reactive. Sources say the initial PR strategy was built around 3 pillars: deflect, delay, and deny. But with the legal decisions now favoring disclosure, those pillars are crumbling. Instead, a new strategy is emerging, one that looks more like crisis containment than recovery. Several damage control professionals have reportedly advised Lively to issue a long-form sit-down interview, either with a major journalist like Oprah or a legacy platform like 60 Minutes. The idea, according to one expert, is to get ahead of the narrative, own her mistakes, explain the context, and try to humanize the situation. But others in her camp are adamantly opposed. One insider claimed there is no safe way for her to speak. No matter what she says, it'll be used against her. By the media, by Baldoni's lawyers, by Swifties. Silence might be the only smart move left. That silence, however, comes at a cost. The longer Blake Lively refuses to explain herself, the more space she leaves for others to do it for her. Already unauthorized sources close to the situation have begun to emerge, leaking fragments of context suggesting possible motives, feeding a growing hunger for answers that no official statement can satisfy. And in an industry that thrives on narrative, the absence of one quickly becomes its own scandal. Lively's absence from several scheduled events has only fanned the flames. A cancelled panel at a tech summit, a postponed appearance on a streaming series. Each missed commitment signals instability, and the brands involved are increasingly uneasy. The financial ramifications are starting to mount. One entertainment law firm estimated that Blake could lose upwards of $30 million in brand partnerships, future roles, and production deals if the texts are as damaging as insiders suggest. That's not even factoring in potential financial penalties from the lawsuit itself. If Baldoni prevails, and while she and husband Ryan Reynolds are by all accounts financially stable, the true cost may be far greater than money. It's about influence, relationships, future viability. In Hollywood, those are the currencies that matter most. And they're evaporating fast, and still the texts remain unreleased. That is the tension haunting everyone involved. Legal experts say we are now in the calm before the storm stage, where the filings have been approved but the evidence has yet to enter the public record. Once that happens, it will be irreversible. Screenshots will circulate, quotes will be taken out of context, jokes will be made, memes created, reputations scorched. In an era where virality happens in seconds, Blake Lively is facing the kind of public reckoning that no press team can contain. But it isn't just Blake's reckoning, it's the industry's. The fallout from this case may set legal, ethical, and cultural precedents for years to come. How much privacy do celebrities have in legal disputes? Are text messages sacred? Can a star be held accountable for things said in private if they influence public perception? What happens when one of the world's most powerful pop stars is implicated in a civil suit, not by action but by association? These questions aren't just legal, they're moral. And as the entertainment world braces for the next shoe to drop, everyone is asking the same thing. How far does this scandal go? And who else will it take down along the way? If there's one truth that's become unmistakably clear through the unfolding chaos, it's this: Blake Lively underestimated the power of exposure. For years, she operated with a near-perfect balance of charm and caution, wielding her public image like a finely honed tool. But no amount of grace, no polished Instagram caption, and no red carpet pose can withstand the firestorm of a legal scandal, laced with leaked texts, betrayed confidences, and the looming shadow of a cultural icon like Taylor Swift. As the public, media, and legal system converge on a single burning question: what exactly did those messages reveal? Lively finds herself careening toward a collision point from which there may be no return. Inside the courtroom, tensions are mounting. The judge's most recent procedural ruling confirmed what many had feared. The text messages in question are not only relevant to the case, they will be entered into evidence in full. This means that every message, every emoji, every venting rant, every half joke, will soon be made available to both parties for use at trial and potentially to the public. The redactions requested by Lively's team were denied almost entirely. The rationale, according to the judge's formal opinion, was rooted in the principle that selective truth does not serve justice, with those words the last barrier between Lively's private life and public scrutiny crumbled. And now a fresh round of panic is seizing Hollywood. In conference rooms from Burbank to Beverly Hills, lawyers and executives are reviewing communication policies. Agents are calling their clients, warning them that if their names appear in Lively's messages even peripherally, it could spark contractual reviews, pulled endorsements, or worse, collateral legal exposure. The stakes are so high that one entertainment law firm has started offering text audit services to its clients, essentially scrubbing years of messages and offering strategic guidance in anticipation of potential litigation. That's how serious this moment is. Because if it can happen to Blake Lively, it can happen to anyone. Taylor Swift's legal team is now fully engaged. Sources close to Swift say she has retained one of the most elite media litigation attorneys in the country to assess her risk and negotiate with the court should her texts appear to overstep legal bounds. Though she's not named in the lawsuit and no one expects criminal charges, the reputational risk remains massive. Her name sells headlines, her words hold weight, and if even a fraction of the messages suggest participation, real or perceived, in the alleged smear campaign against Baldoni, she could face a public relations crisis, unlike any she's weathered before. While some fans remain fiercely loyal, others are bracing themselves for disappointment. In group chats, on Reddit forums, and endless TikTok threads, the question repeats like a drumbeat. Is Taylor innocent or just good at staying quiet? And yet, even as the storm clouds gather, Lively has attempted a return to normalcy. This past weekend, she was spotted dining at a private club in the West Village, surrounded by 2 known business advisors and 1 high-powered crisis consultant. Eyewitnesses described the actress as composed, but distant, noting that she spent most of the evening on her phone, occasionally looking up only to nod at something said. Gone was the breezy, effervescent Blake the public had grown used to seeing. In her place, a woman clearly carrying the burden of unraveling trust. The dinner was cut short after just an hour, and Lively reportedly left through the rear exit. Ryan Reynolds, ever the savvy media player, has remained stoically silent throughout the scandal. But industry insiders claim he's furious, not just at the legal mess, but at the way the court's decision has placed his entire family under a microscope. As co-founder of several business ventures and a lead investor in various entertainment properties, Reynolds stands to suffer major financial losses if his association with the case begins to taint public opinion. Some of his brands have even been approached by consumer advocacy groups demanding statements, and at least 1 licensing deal is reportedly under reconsideration pending outcome. Though no direct blame has been laid at his feet, proximity to scandal in the eyes of the public is as dangerous as guilt, and the trial hasn't even begun. Depositions are underway in secret, though details are beginning to leak. A source who was present during a recent session described one exchange between Baldoni's legal team and a former publicist for Lively as tense, uncomfortable, and brutally specific. According to this individual, the publicist was asked to confirm whether Lively had ever instructed anyone on her team to plant negative press or shape narratives about a male co-star. Though the witness reportedly hesitated, the implications were clear. If Lively's team can be linked to orchestrated media campaigns aimed at harming Baldoni's career, her legal jeopardy grows substantially, and with the text messages forming the core of that argument, each new piece of context adds fuel to an already raging fire. Social media has taken on the role of a courtroom all its own. One viral clip from a podcast episode featuring a well-known industry gossip has already amassed over 8 million views. In it, the host claims to have spoken with someone who read the text firsthand. "It's bad," she said plainly, "not just catty or shady, it's strategic, it's targeted. There's a tone of control in those messages, like she was coordinating a takedown." The claim, unverified and sensational, was immediately debated across all platforms, but the damage was done. Perception took hold. Blake Lively is now seen not as a misunderstood artist or even a protective friend, but as a calculated player in a high-stakes reputation war. Meanwhile, Baldoni is becoming something of a folk hero. While his side has remained mostly professional and procedural, his reputation is enjoying a renaissance. Former collaborators have stepped forward to praise his integrity, and fans have latched onto his narrative as a victim of industry politics who chose to speak out instead of staying silent. His social media presence has surged. But the damage was done. Screenshots of the official court transcript circulated like wildfire. The media pounced. Evening news anchors quoted it. Pundits dissected it. The internet, already bracing for drama, exploded into full-blown hysteria. And this was only day one. Blake Lively's legal team immediately filed a motion to limit further publication of private messages, citing irreparable harm and privacy violations. But the judge, consistent with previous rulings, denied the motion. These were now court documents, part of a public record, and as such they were fair game. Every journalist in the room took that as a green light, and soon the rest of the texts were out. Some were deeply personal, others were shockingly tactical. One message appeared to suggest that Blake and Taylor knew an early draft of Baldoni's directorial work was going to be a career killer, and discussed in detail how to steer press coverage to neutralize his momentum. Another referenced a third party believed to be a powerful streaming executive, and implied that pulling support from Baldoni's project would send a clear message to the press about who really runs the table. These were not casual texts between friends, these were power plays, and when read aloud in the clinical setting of a courtroom stripped of emoji or tone, they sounded cold, calculated, ruthless. The implications were immediate. Overnight, Baldoni's legal position strengthened. What had begun as a high-risk defamation suit now looked less like a stretch and more like a precise, well-aimed strike. The press labeled the texts a blueprint of soft sabotage, and public sentiment began tilting dramatically in his favor. Entertainment columnists described the tone of the messages as chilling. Lawyers called it a masterclass in image manipulation, and psychologists weighed in on the dynamics of groupthink, celebrity power, and the disinhibition of digital communication. Everyone had an angle, everyone had a headline. Back in Lively's camp, chaos reigned. The fallout was swift and brutal. Multiple endorsement deals were terminated within hours. A major fashion brand quietly removed her photos from their website. An indie film she had been attached to as both star and executive producer announced it was reassessing creative direction and leadership. Some longtime collaborators, writers, stylists, and even co-stars publicly distanced themselves. What we read today is not the person I thought I knew, one producer wrote on social media, prompting thousands of comments and a fresh wave of backlash. Even her closest allies were shaken. Ryan Reynolds, who had so far maintained his characteristic silence, was spotted leaving a closed-door meeting at his production company looking visibly shaken. He has yet to make any formal comment, but industry sources say he's grappling with a PR crisis of his own, as several of his businesses are now facing scrutiny for their proximity to Lively's imploding reputation. Behind the scenes, there are rumors of a media firewall being erected, an attempt to isolate his brand from hers without appearing to abandon her publicly. As for Taylor Swift, the text exposure marked an unprecedented threat to her image. Her fans, arguably the most powerful fanbase in the world, splintered into factions. Some defended her to the end, insisting the texts were cherry-picked, taken out of context, or misunderstood. Others, especially older or more media-savvy Swifties, expressed heartbreak. "I can't believe this is the same woman who stood on stage crying during the Reputation tour," one fan tweeted. Another posted a side-by-side of Swift's now infamous "There will be no further explanation. There will just be Reputation" quote with a screenshot of the "Drown him slowly" message captioned, "She meant it." Swift's team issued a short but firm statement that night. Ms. Swift was not a party to this lawsuit. The selected text messages have been taken out of narrative context and were never intended to be weaponized. She will not be commenting further at this time. It didn't help. Major media outlets began pulling past interviews, award speeches, and editorial op-eds, reassessing them through a new, much darker lens. And in a twist that no one could have predicted, a long-forgotten Vanity Fair interview resurfaced, in which Swift spoke glowingly of Baldoni's work ethic and unshakable kindness. That clip went viral. By morning, Swift's silence was no longer a shield. It was a liability. The legal case is far from over, but in many ways the damage is already done. Reputation doesn't wait for a verdict. In today's world, perception is king. And Blake Lively's has undergone the most catastrophic shift imaginable. Once the darling of the fashion world, the patron saint of media-polished elegance, she is now a figure synonymous with duplicity, backroom power games, and the cost of digital arrogance. She has not been convicted of any crime, but she has been convicted in the court of public opinion, and the sentence is exile. As the trial enters its next phase, the question shifts from what happened to what comes next. Will more celebrities be named in future filings? Will Lively Or Swift be forced to testify live in court, and perhaps most chillingly, if two of Hollywood's most beloved women could be revealed in this light, who else might be hiding behind a carefully curated facade? There are scandals, and then there are recalibrations. What unfolded in the Blake Lively v. Justin Baldoni courtroom was not merely a PR disaster or a celebrity misstep. It was a tectonic event, a cultural recalibration of how the public views power, privacy, and the unspoken rules of influence in Hollywood. By the time the court adjourned for the final time that month, the damage had become incalculable. Not in dollars, though those losses were vast, but in trust, in credibility, in myth. Blake Lively did not take the stand, nor did Taylor Swift. Their legal teams fought fiercely to keep them from having to testify live, and they succeeded, for now, but their silence echoed louder than any courtroom testimony. In the vacuum of their absence, the evidence spoke for them, and what it revealed was enough to permanently reshape the landscape of celebrity culture. The judge has yet to issue a ruling on damages, but several legal experts believe the court may favor a partial summary judgment in Baldoni's favor, citing demonstrable reputational harm supported by internal communications now proven authentic. Whether that leads to a negotiated settlement or a full trial verdict is still in flux. What's clear, however, is that Justin Baldoni has won something far more valuable than money: moral vindication. By staying quiet, patient, and unyielding in the face of institutional pressure, Baldoni walked away not just with legal leverage, but with the rarest prize of all in scandal: integrity. As for Blake, the aftershocks continue to radiate. Her team has gone dark, canceling all remaining 2025 public appearances and announcing a sabbatical from acting, producing, and all brand-related endeavors. For the foreseeable future, even her once beloved social media accounts have been scrubbed. Posts archived, comments limited, engagement frozen. The message is clear: retreat, regroup, disappear, and maybe one day re-emerge. But even that comeback, should it ever come, would be a shadow of the empire she once controlled with diamond precision. In an ironic twist, the scandal she so desperately tried to prevent by fighting tooth and nail to suppress those text messages has now become the defining chapter of her public life. The harder she tried to curate, control, and conceal, the more thoroughly she was undone. The Lively brand, once a symbol of effortless chic and down-to-earth elegance, now stands as a cautionary tale, not just about hubris, but about what happens when you mistake private power for public immunity. And Taylor Swift, her position remains precarious, her silence following the text leak, despite mounting pressure, has been interpreted both as legal strategy and reputational defiance. She hasn't lost her core fanbase, but she has fractured the cultural consensus around her. The belief that she was always the wronged party, the one battling institutional injustice, now rings hollow for many. Even her most loyal fans are struggling to reconcile the woman who championed artists' rights and feminist solidarity with the one whose words in private suggested something far more calculating. She may recover, she likely will. Swift is a master at narrative reinvention, and her songwriting talent, her business acumen, and her historic fan loyalty are still unmatched. But she will never fully shake the shadow of this scandal. There will always be a footnote on her record, a yes, but in every conversation about her legacy. The Taylor Swift who emerged from this scandal is not the one who entered it. She is sharper, more cautious, more aware of the limits of even her influence. In the days following the court's unsealing of the text, several other high-profile entertainers reportedly began auditing their digital histories. PR teams have started implementing new protocols: real-time communication scrubs, encryption of sensitive conversations, even a return to face-to-face meetings over digital ones. The lesson has been internalized: nothing is truly private and no one is untouchable. But perhaps the most profound frenzy has
impact
turned
lies
into
with
a
the
cottage
public.
industry.
For a generation
Videos with
raised on
titles like
social
The Fall
media
of Blake Lively,
transparency,
everything
and
we know
parasocial
so far,
relationships,
and Taylor
the
Swift's
unraveling
alleged role
of Blake Lively
exposed
and
dominate
Taylor
the
Swift's
trending
friendship
pages on
felt like a
YouTube and
betrayal.
TikTok. Even mainstream news outlets have begun referring to the drama not just as a lawsuit but as a watershed moment for celebrity accountability in the digital age. For the entertainment industry, it's a moment of reckoning. Executives, writers, actors, and producers are watching closely, not just because it's salacious, but because it signals a new era, where no text is safe, no friendship sacred, no PR team powerful enough to spin a digital footprint into oblivion. The trial will be about more than Blake and Justin. It will be about how power operates behind the curtain and how quickly it can collapse when exposed to light. As courtroom preparations enter their final stages, the pressure behind the scenes has reached a breaking point. Every day brings the trial closer to the public eye, and with it the unavoidable release of the text messages. that have become the beating heart of a scandal now engulfing some of the most powerful names in entertainment. What started as a defamation suit between two former colleagues has morphed into a cultural flashpoint, one that threatens to rewrite the public personas of Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and now in a twist no one saw coming, Taylor Swift. There's a sense across Los Angeles, from the talent agencies to the studio boardrooms, that a seismic shift is underway, one that can't be undone, only survived. Blake's team, still scrambling for stability, is running out of options. Their last-minute attempts to negotiate a private settlement with Baldoni's legal representatives have reportedly gone nowhere. Sources close to the case say Baldoni has no intention of backing down, believing the case is about more than money. It's about accountability. The power dynamics are shifting, and for once the underdog has the leverage. That leverage is powered not just by the court's rulings but by a growing swell of public support. Baldoni has managed to tap into something rare in a case like this: empathy. While Blake is increasingly seen as evasive, privileged, and out of touch, Baldoni is viewed as the principled artist, fighting against a toxic machine. And while Lively herself remains mostly out of sight, the internal fallout is becoming harder to contain. People once considered part of her inner circle have begun reevaluating their associations. A high-profile fashion designer recently confirmed they've postponed indefinitely a capsule collection Blake was set to co-launch this fall. An independent film she was attached to produce has suddenly gone cold in pre-production with no official explanation provided. Even within her personal friendships, the mood has changed. As one longtime acquaintance put it bluntly, no one wants to be the next name in those texts. Then there's Taylor Swift, whose involvement remains the story's most unpredictable variable. Legal experts continue to debate what role, if any, Swift could play in the trial. While she is not a named party in the lawsuit, her text messages are set to be introduced as part of the evidentiary record. What happens if she's subpoenaed to testify? Will she comply? Will her legal team fight the motion? There are no clear answers, only mounting questions. Swift's silence, once seen as tactical, is now being scrutinized with skepticism. Public sentiment, especially among her fanbase, is splintering. Many remain staunch defenders, arguing she's being unfairly dragged into a mess that isn't hers. But others are growing impatient, pointing to her history of advocacy and asking why in this case she's choosing to remain so quiet. Whispers have begun circulating that Taylor Swift's legal team is preparing for the possibility of a closed-door deposition, should her testimony be required. That would allow her to avoid testifying in open court while still complying with procedural demands. It's a compromise that could protect her public image while satisfying legal obligations. But it won't protect her from the headlines. If the texts are inflammatory, even if she was venting, joking, or simply caught in the crossfire, the press will seize on every sentence. Every quote will be plastered across screens and social feeds. Every nuance will be debated by millions. For someone whose career has been built on storytelling, the loss of narrative control may prove the most damaging blow of all. And that loss of control is exactly what Blake Lively is already enduring. She is no longer the protagonist of her own story. The courtroom has stolen that role, casting her instead as a mystery to be solved, or a scandal to be unraveled. The public is no longer watching to root for her. They're watching to see what she'll do next, what she'll say, or whether she'll say anything at all. And each passing day without a direct response feels like a gamble, a bet that the truth won't be as bad as what people are already imagining. But in a media ecosystem where speculation spreads faster than facts, that bet becomes riskier with every second. Within her own home, tensions are reportedly at an all-time high. Ryan Reynolds has continued to shield their children from the headlines, but the couple's dynamic has clearly shifted. Once the embodiment of Hollywood power, coupled them, their silence on the matter has only fueled rumors of internal discord. Friends close to the pair insist they remain united, but even that unity is starting to look more like survival mode than solidarity. And as Reynolds' own business ventures face mounting scrutiny, his tolerance for collateral damage is believed to be wearing thin. There are quiet conversations happening behind the scenes. Meetings with attorneys, agents, and financial planners dart just in case the worst happens. That worst may be coming faster than expected. A source familiar with the upcoming trial calendar has confirmed that the text will be officially introduced into court records within the next 3 weeks. At that point, media outlets will gain access, and the unsealing will almost certainly become the biggest media event of the year. It won't just be the content of the text that shocks people. It will be the realization that so much manipulation, so many whispered jabs, and strategic narratives were exchanged between two women the public believed were symbols of integrity and empowerment. And it isn't just Blake and Taylor who stand to lose. Other names. Agents, producers, stylists, friends. May be caught in the crossfire. The ripple effect of these disclosures could alter careers, cancel projects, and even trigger new legal complaints. There's growing chatter among entertainment lawyers that if the texts implicate other parties in reputational sabotage or breach of confidentiality, we could see a wave of lawsuits following this one, and that more than any single scandal is what terrifies Hollywood right now. The idea that this case is just the beginning of a much larger reckoning. For Justin Baldoni, that reckoning is exactly the point. He has framed this lawsuit from the beginning as a stand against the weaponization of influence, a challenge to a system that allows narrative control to become more powerful than truth. Whether his claims will hold up in court is still to be seen, but in the court of public opinion his position is growing stronger by the day. He hasn't had to leak anything, he hasn't had to retaliate with personal attacks. All he's done is let the truth unfold piece by piece, confident that the facts alone are damning enough, and if those facts confirm what the whispers have been saying. If Blake Lively and Taylor Swift truly conspired even subtly to control the media narrative against Baldoni, then the fallout won't just destroy careers. It could permanently shift how we view celebrity influence and the power of private communications in public life. The world has always loved a rise and fall story, but this one feels different. Because this one isn't just about a star making a mistake. It's about a system built to protect them failing in spectacular, irreversible fashion. And then, it happened. The moment that had hung like a dark cloud over Hollywood for months finally arrived. In a downtown Los Angeles courtroom packed with reporters, attorneys, and a few brave industry insiders, the text messages between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift were formally entered into evidence and read into the public record. With that act, the veil was lifted, the speculation shattered, and the firestorm ignited. No more rumors, no more anonymous tips, no more hypotheticals. The world now had receipts. Screenshots of messages once exchanged in presumed privacy between two of the most powerful women in the entertainment industry were suddenly unmistakably real and devastating. The first round of texts revealed during the morning session was surprisingly tame, mild venting, industry gossip, a few digs at former collaborators, but by midday the tone shifted. What started as idle frustration turned into explicit strategic conversations. Ones that appeared to show coordination, narrative shaping, and in some moments outright gloating. In one exchange, Blake seemingly forwarded a message from a journalist adding, "Perfect timing, let's feed him the other angle now." In another, she appeared to reference Baldoni by name, calling him a PR hazard with too much goodwill to tear down cleanly. Swift, according to the transcripts, responded, "Then don't tear. Drown him slowly." The courtroom gasped. That line, whether meant literally, metaphorically, or sarcastically, hit like a thunderclap. Within minutes, it was trending globally. These weren't just stars. They were aspirational figures, women who seemed to do it right in a world so often built to tear women down. To learn that behind the scenes they engaged in the same petty power plays, whispered manipulation, and casual cruelty. They seemed above. It broke something for many fans. The fantasy is over. And that, in a way, is the legacy of this case. Not just the legal ramifications or the career fallout, but the realization that image is no longer armor, that curation is not the same as character, and that in a world of endless receipts your private truth will always outlast your public fiction. Blake Lively is no longer Hollywood's golden girl, Taylor Swift is no longer above scrutiny, and Justin Baldoni is no longer a footnote in someone else's narrative. He is the man who pulled back the curtain, stood his ground, and changed the rules of the game. In the end, this wasn't just about defamation, it was about definition. Who defines the story, who controls the truth, and what happens when the answer is no one? The verdict in the court of law is still pending, but in the court of public opinion the judgment has already been delivered.